The topic is authentication in WASP framework. Okay, so we have already gone through the overview of how authentication works in it on WASP framework, uh, and now we will be seeing how the internals of it work. So as we have seen that there is a user entity which is used to denote what entity we are storing our users in, and there's a method, and there is on auth field redirect to, which is used to redirect to a particular page when if we are not logged in or we fail the authentication. Now let's just create a new user. We go to sign up page. Okay, let's just create test user, and now we have created a user and I am signing up. Now I have signed up. Now where is the data being stored? If I can now wasp.out.db, where is this folder? uh, if we go to the wasp folder and we check the out folder, and there is the db folder, and in this the SQLite database is there, the default. I mean, if we use a different database, for example the local PostgreSQL or a serverless database, or some cloud data or some cloud database, we'll be able to see the same data over there too. Now we only created this particular user entity, and it shows that there are 1, 2 and 3 users that have ever signed in. Now, and how is this, and then what are all these entities? Now let's just see if I can pull up. So this entity we have created, and even though it is not shown here, there is a reference to the auth entity where will we see it. Okay, so another difference, this is the schema that we created. There is only the user entity, but if you go to the compiled schema, we can see that there are user which references to the auth entity. The auth, this also references to the user entity. I mean, it is a one-on-one relation. No, yes, it is a one-on-one relation, and it also references to the auth identity and session, and there's auth identity entity, and there is session entity. These are the three extra entities that are being created by default internally by the WASP engine. So the user is linked to the auth entity, one-on-one relation, and this uses the user ID as a foreign key. If you can see there, for example, let's just say the current user which we just signed up, I mean, it is going to be the last 3. It is connected to the auth. Here we go. If we go there, then we can see that the user ID with 3, once again the user ID is used as a foreign key to reference the user entity. Now if we see the user ID 3, we have the authentication ID as this particular thing. Let's just remember the first 4 characters, CEAA. Now these 3 are references. This ID is the authentication ID. Obviously this user ID is used to link the entity that we are using to store the signed up users, and the entity that the internal WASP engine is using to store all the signed up users. I mean, this all these things are done internally. We cannot access them without WASP compiling. So that is why, and also from a security perspective, it is not advisable. I mean, it does not make sense for us to be having access to these 3 entities. That is why there is a separation we have the user entity as exposed entity that we can use in our own logic. I mean, for example, okay, we'll be seeing that later. Now, there is identities and there is sessions. Sessions, well, it is pretty obvious. Wasp also handles sessions. Expire set user ID for what user ID and what authentication ID will be having a session. The authentication ID will, if I can remember, session is, yes, the session the session refers to the the session refers to the authentication entity via this foreign key. Okay, so the authentication entity is referenced in session with the foreign key user ID. So there are only two things, ID and expires at. And for each authentication ID, I mean, for each user, there can be multiple sessions. I mean, for example, if we log in from phone or from your laptop, or from your tablet, or from a different device, they should each have different sessions, which is handled internally by WASP. We can also have our own custom logic, for example, how long the session should be, and other stuff like that. But we'll be seeing that at a later date. Now, authentication identity. This is also referencing the auth entity, and in the auth entity, this is referenced as a many. This means that an authentication, for example, that is a user can have multiple authentication and identities. Now, what does this mean? It means that a user can log in from multiple methods. For example, if I have a Notes app and I want I have logged in via username and password. Now, I should be able to see my notes. Now, what happens if I change my method of login from a username and password to, for example, let's just say social authentication or Google login or email and password? Then also I should be able to see my notes. This is why this particular authentication identity is important. If the auth identity keeps the auth identity keeps track of all the signed in users ever. Auth identity entity is used to keep track of all the users and all their methods of sign-ins ever. Now, we can see that, okay, let's just see a created user. We have seen the user as 3. This is referenced in auth entity. We go to the auth entity. We see the user ID 3, and we can see that the authentication ID for user 3 is this thing. Let's just remember the first 4 characters, CEAA. Now, we need to see how this particular user logged in or signed up. This is referenced in the auth identity schema, auth identity entity. Now, if you can see CEAA, this is the same authentication identity. Now we can see that they have logged in from via the username and password method. The username is this, the password is hashed internally, and that's it. Now this is for all these signed in users. As for the session, now that I have logged in, my session is active. uh, my session is active for this particular CEAA auth entity. For example, that is the CEAA auth user, which was again CEAA test user, which you have just created. Now, if I log out from here and again go back to the session entity, and if I can refresh, maybe No. Now there is no session, it means we have logged out of it. So this particular entity is used to keep track of how many users are currently logged in. That's pretty much it about the internal workings. That's the overview. We can go in deeper at a later date.